When it comes to heroes, and especially Disney heroes, we all have our favorites, and that favorite can only be of a quality that represents the best in all of its history and one that is not an animated character as you have seen. Because although this channel heavily leans into the love of Disney animation, so does it revel in its own live action, demonstrated by the heights of the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, where only a man like Captain Jack Sparrow can take that claim to be the best. Because out of all the heroes I've ever covered, none had such an impact on a genre of cinema like this one had that wasn't even meant to be the main character in the first place, but certainly managed to take the world by storm, doing things that are not of the typical hero grain anyway. But that is what makes him truly special in his own way, making people think he is one while doing things the complete opposite as an end result. His success is in the failure of his character to appear as a pirate, as most people might say, that really is the best in its own nature. Truly someone who is in a league of his own above every single other Disney protagonist that has ever existed, and the world can fully agree with such a point, making you think what is bad is actually good, or what is good is actually bad depending on someone's view in service of all that is on the heroic side, remaining to be so beloved long after the film's release despite the ups and downs that Johnny Depp himself had to face, which many clamor back for. So this video is going to chart his journey to describe why he is the perfect pirate and a perfect hero for those very reasons, from the very first movie to the very last. Well, not actually the last, because that movie does not represent his character very well and quite frankly butchered everything about the pirates due to how horrible it was compared to the rest of the franchise. Where yes, this still indeed does include On Stranger Tides, which is a film I still enjoy to some degree. Not all, but mainly how Jack Sparrow's character is still fully there compared to Dead Men Tell No Tales, continuing the legacy of all of us fell in love with. Which of course begins with his own introduction being one of the most legendary of all characters, appearing like a grand pirate who sails the seven seas and then realizing it's a dainty little boat that starts to sink as he reaches the dock. It's a brilliant introduction that tells you a lot about the character without saying anything because of how he can appear as a grand pirate captain, but also not really at the same time when things appear not what they seem. Rather, it makes him look like an idiot that most people have become accustomed to. That is meant to throw you off as a character if you see him look or act a certain way, judging such actions that come soon after. Such design comes from the fact that he was not intended to be a main character and just more of a supporting character, as evident by what the director and the writers determined before they got Johnny Depp. This is perfectly said by Gore Verbinski himself, quoting saying, "The first film was a movie, and then Jack was put into it almost. He doesn't have the obligations of the plot in the same ways that the other characters have. He meanders his way through and he kind of affects everyone else. That as a character, the goal of him was to be the spice of the film, surrounded by those who enter the strange world of pirates, going against good and bad sides of the complicated figures like Barbossa and Husuch, who represent the more true darker nature of that aspect and what can represent a good man while also still being a pirate within the truth of Will's father, turned into a world he never thought he'd be a part of as that real main protagonist written in. One who probably couldn't have been in the film the way Depp played him due to the concerns of Disney executives who were, like always, horribly wrong about situations, since it was a little different from the family-friendly image most were used to before that point. The point of modeling Jack's own pirate character after rock stars like Keith Richards, who would play Jack's dad in the later films, where it's perfect in every which way, playing again with his unpredictable personality displayed into the intro when he tries to board a ship guarded by Murtagh and Mulroy to ask what he is doing there.
"What's your purpose in Port Royal, Mr. Smith?" Yeah, and no lies.
All right then. I confess, it is my intention to commandeer one of these ships, pick up a crew and Tortuga, raid, pillage, plunder, and otherwise pilfer my Weasley black guts out.
I said no lies.
I think he's telling the truth.
If he were telling the truth, he wouldn't have told us.
Unless, of course, he knew you wouldn't believe the truth, even if he told it to you.
And that last line says a lot about his whole character, because if you look at someone like him, you think he's a low nasty pirate where you don't think any word that comes out of his mouth is true. You just cannot believe this man who uses the ship for good intentions, neither can you say that for the bad of his piracy intentions. A figure you just simply cannot trust as a trickster who is after his own gain of another ship rather than what he just said, evident by the later fact he was the captain of the Black Pearl, his beloved ship that allowed him to travel the seven seas until you saw that beginning when he was just on a small boat, now taken over by pirates who mutinied him for something else. But despite these harrowing facts that could be true to plunder and pillage from Tortuga, he goes ahead and rescues the governor's daughter after she fainted into the ocean. A commendable action for a pirate that demonstrates the fact that he does care about people even if it comes from a society that hates what he does, which in fact still does happen when they find out he has the branding of a pirate by Commodore Norrington, ordering to arrest him on the governor's orders, where his piss-poor equipment can only come from the dumbest.
You are without doubt the worst pirate I've ever heard of.
But you have heard of me.
Where at least you could take heed in the fact that he does like when people recognize or hear his name, wanting to be legendary as pirates like Blackbeard, who've been known in modern society when we look back on names associated with piracy, and how that image is used to constant advantage when they try to chain him up, knowing the leverage played with Miss Swan that he just rescued.
Gentlemen, milady, you will always remember this as the day that you almost caught Captain Jack Sparrow.
That he finally gets the upper hand again after getting his stuff back and messing with the Royal Navy at the port, getting away while facing Will in a sword fight. Where this entire sequence, and the fact he cheated to win against Turner, confirms to us that he is indeed that pirate as much as any other. I mean, you already knew such a fact in his outfit and the first time he talked to anyone, but this entire sequence is done to lay it out and demonstrate what kind of pirate he is against society. A good one, and of course still a bad one who's after his own gain, only defeated by a sound distraction on his head so he can be jailed ready for his eventual execution. One, unfortunately, that is prevented when the mysterious Black Pearl, his own ship, comes into port that very night with the undead crew taking the cursed medallion and Elizabeth with them, where Will turns to Jack to make a deal during to rescue her since the others like Norrington are delayed of doing anything at all to try to get the Black Pearl back, and how Jack uses that to his advantage by coming up with reasons not to, trying to actually pry information that can be useful to him, especially when he asks what Turner's name was.
What's your name?
Will Turner.
That would be short for William, I imagine. Good, strong name. No doubt name for your father, eh?
Yes.
The importance of this actually comes later from the fact he learned of who Will truly is as a character in the Caribbean connected to the world of pirates, being that of his father being a fellow former crew member of Jack's whom he respected, and useful to know what can really help with this curse when he found out that the crew had it. And watching the escape sequence is a true testament to the analytical, chaotic character that is Jack Sparrow, who uses the most stupidly insane situations to his advantage. Like on the surface, none of what he does should logically work, but how it unfolds in the film, it starts to make sense. At first, removing the crew of the Navy's biggest ship, the Dauntless, to get Norrington's attention, but then using that attention to actually aim for the Interceptor, the fastest ship in the fleet. The reason why he aimed for that as the vessel of escape is because of the information he learned earlier in the film from Murtaugh and Mulroy when they were talking about the ships and debating the truth of the Black Pearl being real as the fastest ship amongst the sea.
Oh, the Dauntless is the power in these waters, true enough. But there's no ship that can match the Interceptor for speed.
One done so they can get out of Port Royal faster from the army chasing down on them. Because even while the Dauntless serves as the most powerful with the cannons amidst its own size, you realize that his own objective is to reclaim his own ship and get there the quickest they can, knowing damn well they will check this ship out, disabling the rudder chain to leave them stuck in frustration to never catch them. It's just so insanely brilliant when you realize the size of the Royal Navy as a whole and what they would think about logically compared to what a pirate thinks, if you know the truth and the backstory of Jack Sparrow.
That's got to be the best pirate I've ever seen.
So it would seem.
And these words truly have remained timeless to this day of a truth that no man can deny, that he is the best pirate, leaving Will to wonder how he came to know his father Bootstrap Bill.
Good man. Good pirate. I swear you look just like him.
A revelation of the truth, knowing he was the son of the pirate that he refused to accept, unknowingly playing into the hands of Jack Sparrow's leverage, one that people keep underestimating time and time again.
Now, as long as you're just hanging there, pay attention. The only rules that really matter are these. What a man can do and what a man can't do. You can accept that your father was a pirate and a good man, or you can't. The pirate is in your blood, boy, so you'll have to square with that someday. Now, me, for example, I can let you drown, but I can't bring this ship into Tortuga all by me onesies, savvy? So, can you sail under the command of a pirate? Or can you not?
with the rules of him saying what a man can do or can't do just applies greatly to his value as a hero, knowing someone that can be a scallywag and a pirate and still good, and not one that is generally considered bad at all, what society usually thinks that pirates are like. So within the nature of Jack Sparrow, who says some represent chaotic neutral, playing both sides to his advantage, reveals the underlying theme and values that they hold, whether you learn to accept that of what can or cannot be, being all up to you if you want to decide that. If you can question it, then you can question it, and if you can live with it, then live with it. That there is always more than meets the eye of any person beyond the cultivated image one might say from the rules of government or these trade organizations beholden to society, even though the next scene does show him relish in the structureless haven of Tortuga filled with nasty old villains and drenched in such vile filth. But after they gather the crew is where we get Gibbs to tell the backstory of Jack Sparrow and his history with Barbossa, that they were all out for treasure but decided, cause everyone knows he acts kinda stupid to them, to mutiny him, marooning him on an island with a pistol carrying one shot and madness to take over his brain with such isolation. But how he waited on that island without using his pistol for revenge, managing to escape by roping a bunch of sea turtles, using his own human hair from his own back. Crazy, but like always in the character of Jack Sparrow, truly genius while the rest of the crew suffered the curse of the Aztec gold, where you keep understanding he is just levels above everyone else when he comes into contact, only disregarded by his good-hearted nature and whimsical personality to negotiate. Stuff that is still our main hero has a hard time comprehending, wanting to act now to save the ones that they love when he knocks Jack out, leaving him with his former crew who mutinied him so he can make a deal. Where despite all that can happen, people still cannot find themselves to trust such a pirate. So in this situation, he tries to make another deal with his former first mate to find the real man whose blood they need to undo this curse finally.
The girl's blood didn't work, did it?
You know whose blood we need.
I know whose blood you need.
Of course, he still doesn't trust him well, but how he knows, he retorts he wasn't the one who did the mutiny in the first place, pointing out he didn't get cursed as well. A taunt that actually rings true, with all valid points that makes him more trustworthy when you think about it, but how such negotiation tactics he tries between two parties like sparing the interceptor crew is what led to the mutiny in the first place, wanting action over negotiation, thinking he might be too weak compared to the typical pirate image that Barbossa is supposed to represent as the darker half of himself compared to Sparrow, who is more good-hearted in nature. Not that Barbossa isn't good-hearted as we've seen later, but you get what I mean as that very role. It's the point of the good character that we really have to stress out at this point because it's going to play a lot more in his character in his future films and his own past that leads him to be the man who he is. The fact that got him marooned on an island for a second time with at least someone else like Elizabeth while they finally get Will in their own hands. But how this time it's easier to get back since she burned all the rum so that the Dauntless can notice and they can rescue and capture him. But no situation is too hard for him to handle even within the company of thousands of enemies, using Elizabeth's desperate leverage to his advantage to grab Commodore's heart, helping him because of that supposed proposal, that he can convince Norrington to stay back from any attempted ambush to go alone at the risk of Elizabeth's life being in danger, knowing the ship is close to their own and that they are undead pirate crew. One done obviously for the simple fact that Jack needs his own vengeance upon Barbossa and to actually rescue Will in the way he knows how best, stabbing everyone in the back under the water and getting his beloved Pearl, which in fact leads him to his greatest scene in this entire film. Not unlike the introduction type of fight, but why in terms of his negotiation skills were very important that other pirates and in fact the Royal Navy members never thought about realizing in the first place, underestimating a man they know not of after all.
It's not possible.
Not probable.
This is the most genius plan ever devised because if you understood his body language, giving hints to Will, and the fact he just hid an Aztec gold coin up his own sleeve before dropping it, you notice that he was actually going to use his plan to free Will and the rest of the crew. It's the most elaborate trick planning to elevate Barbossa by leading him to a trap. Well, in both senses of the word, of Norrington's Dauntless crew and Barbossa's undead pirate crew. One that doesn't really seem bad because it's the way they both can get what they want, leading a fleet and Jack becoming a captain once again of the Black Pearl under the command of Commodore Barbossa, who gets a modest size of his cut while they become mortal once again and leading an entire fleet of ships. Plus, he doesn't have to go back to face execution in Port Royal in any way, so his journey is all the more sweet and can continue in any way he wants. But how it's not intended to be that way because Jack Jack plotted his revenge journey for the Pearl over 10 years, not having Barbossa win because he is the true pirate, carrying one pistol and one shot he intends so damn well to heavily use towards Hector. Or even he admits he could never anticipate what Jack even plans in his own mind, agreeing with his deal, delivering one major quote that makes his entire character who he truly is.
I must admit, Jack, I thought I had you figured. It turns out you're a hard man to predict.
Me, I'm dishonest. And a dishonest man you can always trust to be dishonest. Honestly. It's the honest ones you want to watch out for. Because you can never predict when they're gonna do something incredibly stupid.
It's a perfect quote because he was being dishonest in the most honest way possible. The truth that he is an honest man doing the most incredibly stupid things by how unpredictable they really are. Dishonest about being dishonest, honestly. Which basically just means he's more of an honorable pirate who lies towards everyone's face to execute his own agenda for good reasons that benefits him and his friends he helps. The most unconventional conventional hero, you might say, when he begins this battle, freeing Will to help in the most epic swashbuckling sword fight you have ever seen in your life. And again, you're understanding exactly why he did that earlier in his negotiations when he picked up the coin, distracting Barbossa up until this point where he knew damn well he could not defeat him alone under the curse, revealing he was cursed himself in that moment to continue the fight until it was the right time. Of course, when Elizabeth arrives to help and he stains the medallion he stole with his own blood to give to Will while he shot Barbossa. Thinking, of course, at first it is wasted, but not really when Will managed to do the same and life returned back to the pirate's life and they went away quickly as soon as he found it, until of course he gets revived later on. And in the end, with the Royal Navy's victory over the remaining undead pirates, Jack successfully completes his revenge, but unfortunately at the cost of his new crewmates escaping with the Pearl and getting back to Port Royal to face his eternal death. But since Will learned over the course of his journey with Jack and the truth of his own father, he commits to a rescue plan that would surely earn Will's own death as well at the cost of what people like Jack are really like. That it reminds you, just as he did earlier in the film of Bootstrap Bill, that Jack Sparrow is a good man. A good hero who has done right by our main characters despite being a blasted pocket-picking pirate, where he indeed gets his victory over everyone else, noticing a familiar parrot and a familiar ship, setting sail for new adventures for his beloved horizon. A well-earned journey to reclaim his love of the sea as a testament to his own character as a pirate able to show others who they really are, which gets us to the next film. A film that showcases Ware's mistakes, also managing to catch up to him, knowing of another deal he made 13 years prior to the events of the story with none other than Davy Jones. This is where we have to start learning more about his past, the part of the East India Trading Company that plays a major part in these two sequels, with Lord Cutler Beckett being the overarching antagonist of this trilogy who wants to arrest Will and Elizabeth and have them hanged to the gallows and end piracy once and for all. He rose to the ranks of first mate in his history while he served under the corporation, but how Beckett wanted to transport slaves under the wicked wench, which he could not have being the good person he really was, causing him to sink the ship and being branded as a pirate until he summoned Davy Jones to revive the ship and captain it for 13 years before giving his soul up for a century. Where that past finally catches up to him, being visited by none other than Bill Turner, who had coral on his face as proof he gave a deal to Davy Jones from his own suffering Barbossa caused to him when he was still under that same curse, with the pressure of water making him suffer yet still breathing, branding him with a black spot to inform that Jones was coming for him now and making haste for a mysterious key. Where the crew notices the strange action Jack was talking about, knowing something was up that made even he fearful, as he does not want to serve under Davy Jones under any circumstance.
The captain seems to be acting a bit strange.
Setting sail without knowing his own heading? Something's got Jack vexed. And mark my words, what bodes ill for Jack Sparrow bodes ill for us all.
The journey to Pelagostos, where Jack tries to escape fate as long as possible on land, where Jones cannot be at the cost of cannibal natives, only buying a short amount of time before Will returns, arriving to tell him about the situation and what Beckett wants. Needing the compass, but how he needs to find the key for some odd reason, with the breath of Davy Jones down his own back. Leading to Tia Dalma explaining the key is the chest of Davy Jones' own heart, and that they need to find it, also noticing the interest she had in Will Turner for some reason. Distinct connection to the truth of what lies beyond Davy Jones' locker, using that to his own advantage. And of course, Jack using both Will to play him for something more, sending him down to the location where the Flying Dutchman was to retrieve this info, finally to settle the debt, but actually still getting caught by Davy Jones himself and his own crew, facing him once more to drive in the point that he has to serve, where he cannot run away from his own destiny, and how he always does so each time.
You've been captain of the Black Pearl for 13 years. That was our agreement.
Technically, I was only captain for 2 years, then I was viciously mutinied upon.
Then you were a poor captain, but a captain nonetheless.
But how good old Jack always had some sort of plan up his sleeve to delay the inevitable situation, resulting him making a deal for 100 souls in 3 days, as Jones thinks that is what his soul is on worth, starting with Mr. Turner himself, which he's so easy to accept living with that burden to give him up.
But I wonder, Sparrow, can you live with this? Can you condemn an innocent man, a friend, to a lifetime of solitude in your name while you roam free?
Yep, I'm good with it.
Where as you go along in Dead Man's Chest, you start to notice the different development they went for Jack Sparrow, who gained their respect as a good pirate from the last, but not so much here, backstabbing both Will and Elizabeth to some degree to run from fate. His own fate, because the quest of Jack Sparrow is the quest of life itself. And why mention something like this that might harm his heroic image? Because all heroes have to go through some sort of journey, and Jack is not free from every sin that can be inescapable sometimes. Remember, he is pirate, only delayed where the heart has to be used to his advantage, convincing Elizabeth on his side due to her wanting to be with Will to help find his chest so that they can be reunited, saying this is the key to save him, just like he tried convincing Will in the first place, who finally found his father again, being a new slave to Davy Jones. The knowledge becomes partly of stopping Cutler Beckett too, who also seems to be after Jones's own heart for his grand purpose as a true villain to Jack Sparrow and all that piracy represents. The intention of what his own compass leads to, trying to have the letters make him a privateer under the authority of England while they execute the rest. A fate that does not seem fit for Sparrow, being a slave once again to Beckett's authority, playing Elizabeth to try and persuade him to get them back. And as a pirate, he tries to sway others to his side, manipulation out of curiosity, playing this game with Elizabeth to try and love him. The qualities of a true swashbuckler of indecency, no matter how hard the title of good man can be perceived.
You will come over to my side, I know it.
You seem very certain.
One word, love. Curiosity. You long for freedom. You long to do what you want to do because you want it. To act on selfish impulse. You want to see what it's like. One day, you won't be able to resist.
Mentioning such points as this to remind you he's not like your typical hero in any way you can think of when it comes to Disney. That edge that ideas can be derived that doesn't have to hold itself towards a rose-tinted glass. And how that chest symbolically represents the desire of the heart of both physically of Davy Jones's own and emotionally in terms of 3 men consisting of Jack, Norrington, and Turner who want that for their own purpose. Of course, on the run from being sent to the locker, used as leverage from calling his own Kraken that he does not want to serve another man, while the others just want to save their own lives of their father or their own reputation. A truth that Elizabeth learns to how Jack tricked them all just to save his own hind on the basis that they needed saving, and how sometimes he is too smart for his own gain to notice others noticing things that might be of use when Norrington notices the jar of dirt that had the heart, which sadly leaves everyone confused the other way around for a fate he tried so desperately to stop but could not because the past can only take you so far. Where even in the bravest of circumstances, Jack is also a coward who values his own life above others even while discovering that this leverage could be lost.
I got a jar of dirt, I got a jar of dirt, and guess what's inside it?
However, this does not mean he gives up his own values, because when the Kraken tried to take down his beloved ship with them, he realized his heart was not that dark either. That even at the end of all things, despite all that Ken showed his own cowardice, being a pirate who wants to save his own hind, is a man who still cares deeply about his own crew. One of good faith who still helped others at his last moments, when they all went into the small boat while Elizabeth stayed a little behind to give in to that realization that she must change Jack to sacrifice him to the Kraken to settle Jones' debt once they get away.
I'm not sorry.
Pirates.
Where if you realize it, It's a true victory for himself, despite what will happen, knowing that she is a pirate as much as anyone else in this film, that he makes other people realize the best of him that can also be described as the worst in his own society. But beyond that point, when they all escape, he still tries hard enough to try to escape himself, but how he can't do it because it's destined fate in the most crazy way possible. Learning to accept that with honor, as we spoke earlier from Barbossa's last moments a while ago, honestly dishonest, who upholds bravery in the face of acceptable death, going out with such destined courage, and how such actions let him live in the world with such infamous appeal, mocking Davy Jones with no heart in his chest, while Beckett gets it from Norrington's own actions that leads him down a path of retribution in World's End. The end of the trilogy, where his final moment of Dead Man's Chest revealed the return of a pirate who understands that very same notion of who they are. No matter how hard or difficult he might be, he still is a good man that others will be willing to fight for in that destiny of what a pirate's life means for me. And the afterlife in the locker is the fate worse than death for Jack, trapped with his own beloved Pearl in an endless desert where no man can come out sane, especially himself because he loved the sea and it's all nothing but dirt. Not that someone like Jack ever seemed to be sane in the first place anyways. An endless sea where crewmates were just of himself, out of his own personality, questioning the idea of who Jack Sparrow really was, the person he was destined to be as the immortal creature that everyone would utter amongst the sea. Now the true importance of World's End is the question of that fate that Sparrow chooses for himself, who he was as a character and an everlasting pirate who tussles with the question of life itself and lasting with his own love of the sea, similar to the destructive fate of Davy Jones as I have mentioned before, where he finally gets a chance to be free again within the quest of the crew to summon the Brethren Court to stop Beckett from taking over all the seas and piracy once and for all. Death is someone that comes for us all in this sequence, and we must tussle with the idea of what is right and what is wrong. What purpose does someone like have a heart to serve to someone's advantage, as the cost of souls greatly rise in the locker where Jones was supposed to ferry them to safety. It's a pain all must experience when Elizabeth's father joins into the Song of the Dead, passing on the true knowledge of what happens to the soul who stabs the heart of Davy Jones, taking his place as it closes up on both Turner and Sparrow to realize that consequence.
I learned that if you stab the heart, yours must take its place, and you will sail the seas for eternity. The Dutchman must have a captain. Silly thing to die for.
That there is a price that needs to be paid for the eternal spirit in the physical realm changed by something who neglected his duty. We see this later when two little versions of himself tried to tussle with this idea if he can muster the courage to stab his own heart, questioning his love of the seas forever or eternity of giving up things every 10 years of his life, which also happens to help himself solving the missing puzzle piece of how to get out of the realm of the dead, in a question of fate done by the setting of the sun, which can only mean it can only come from down to rise up.
The immortal Captain Sparrow. Ooh, I like that. Come sunset, it won't matter. Not sunset. Sundown and rise. Up.
It's one of the greatest sequences of film I've ever seen, with the piece Up is Down, where he geniusly tricks everyone doing the most craziest thing ever possible, forcing them to look left and right to rock the boat. You see, doing this is insanely clever because it gets people to question what is happening while immediately following him doing such actions. I mean, other people could see the fact that he probably could have just told him to rock the boat back and forth, and that makes much more sense, but there's an element of fun within Jack's method of madness, that he is able to get people on their toes to think about a situation that ends up working for the best because of its unconventional nature in a world that is truly at its end. Because if you get people to do something incredibly stupid, they will learn. At least that's what I think when it comes to Jack Sparrow's character, who tries to do this when you notice his erratic behavior that really does work. It gets people on their toes to think about a situation that isn't thinkable at all in their terms. That the mind of a person works best while at play of fates that can bring out the worst to come to mind. One he tries to still avoid when they free themselves back to the land of the living, or the seas of the living more like, to try to get their crisis solved. It's another moment where Jack realizes the inevitability and pains of life when the body of the dead Kraken shows up from the last time we've seen them. That the immortal, indestructible, destructive beast that swallowed the Pearl and other ships before in the past now lays dead under the orders of Beckett earlier because he controlled the heart, is another turning point in his own development when both he and Barbossa has a conversation of life's greatest tragedies.
Still thinking of running, Jack?
Think you can outrun the world? You know, the problem with being the last of anything. By and by, there'll be none left at all.
Sometimes things come back, mate. We live in proof, you and me.
Aye, but that's a gamble of long odds, ain't it? There's never a guarantee of coming back. But passing on, that's dead certain.
Summoning the Brethren Court, then, is it?
It's our only hope, lad.
That's a sad commentary in and of itself.
The world used to be a bigger place.
The world's still the same. It's just less in it.
It's a heartfelt conversation that is truthful in nature about the realities of their own lives as pirates, even in the face of beating such odds of death. That passing on will still eventually happen to us all, represented in the last of a kind that Jack so desperately tries to run away with, but how it always comes back in the end, just like the last movie represented for him. And now charged with the duty to determine whether they get to live or die by a code, extending all their lives to what piracy means to me. That the world stays much the same in terms of size, but how it can change when people decide to create less of it in terms of what death can bring. Where Jack is a man who truly has a heart, where I mean by this in terms of caring about everyone even when he doesn't show it as a good person others value, leading to Sao Fang taking over the Pearl for a short time to get him back to Beckett and creating another deal for his personal gain to destroy piracy forever as another reflection of the world having much less in it by his own plans. To come from a place of negotiation once again for his plans against piracy and the value of his own life. And the key point I want to mention here is a deleted scene from, well, this scene. Because if you heard earlier, before Davy Jones revived the Black Pearl, I mentioned some sort of backstory that has been explained in other content like books about Jack's own past and the East India Company that he worked for. He worked under Beckett to do what they're told, and one that really drives him the point why he is a good man that is a pirate due to the actions that Cutler took for himself, wanting the wicked wench to transport as slaves before it became the Black Pearl. Where stuff like this is where I kinda wish they kept it in, as it gave more depth that was missing from these successive sequels as the movies went along. Not that I didn't like them at all, because I still loved them and had fond memories up until the last movie, but there was something to his own character that was there even during the times of roughness that he was out for his own, with his worst flaws and his best traits, and something I can agree with the critics having something missing in the mixed reception of when the movies came out.
The last I saw of that ship, she was on fire. A blackened hulk sinking beneath the waves. We had a deal, Jack. I contracted you to deliver cargo on my behalf. You chose to liberate it.
People aren't cargo, mate.
It is the true separable notion that makes Jack a hero and Beckett a villain for the fact he was alright with working in this lifestyle that would have been well rewarded for himself until he learned of the fact that people were enslaved and had to be delivered in the name of good business. That the brand he came was simply a circumstance of freedom rather than oppression that most want for their personal rich desire. And how it becomes face to face once again with someone who only wants to use him and dispose soon after he got what he wanted, but how Sparrow was always the better man who can talk people out of those situations.
If I kill you, then I can use the compass to find Shipwreck Cove, is it? On my own. Cut out the middleman, as it were.
With me killed, you'd arrive at the cove, find it's a stronghold nigh impregnable, able to withstand blockade for years, and then you'd be wishing, oh, if only there was someone I had not killed inside to ensure that the pirates then come outside.
And you can accomplish all this, can you?
You may kill me, but you may never insult me. Who am I? I'm Captain Jack Sparrow.
That even if he could use the compass to cut Jack out of being the middleman, making the deal sweeter for himself, he would still not be able to accomplish his final goal, so he would help get the pirates out too. Which, unfortunately, he agrees to quick haste before it can be more accomplished as Barbossa and Elizabeth make a deal with Sao Fang and attacks Beckett's ship. This is where he can manage to make his escape back to the Pearl with ease in the only way he knows how best, that can only be said to be madness. One that Beckett says so himself, not believing to be possible, but in fact is, through the one simple quote Jack that best describes what he does.
You're mad.
Thank goodness for that, because if I wasn't, this would probably never work.
Scenes like this show us that everything Jack does is with intended purpose, that he cannot accomplish the thing he does unless it is done with a tinge of borderline insanity.
Do you think he plans it all out? Just makes it up as he goes along.
And after Will gets sent to the brig, he easily escapes the night after because of that very same deal he made to bring them to Shipwreck Cove later in the film. All part of a planned process that Jack has in store to stab Davy Jones' heart to become master of the seas and ending the burden Will has to face with the potential of losing his future wife.
I'm losing her, Jack. Every step I make for my father is a step away from Elizabeth.
Mate, if you choose to lock your heart away, you'll lose it for certain. If I might lend a machete to your intellectual thicket, avoid the choice altogether. Change the facts. Let someone else dispatch Jones.
The choice and consequence of learning earlier that he who stabs the heart must take its place. These two characters want it so much because one wants life eternally and the other one just wants to save the lives of the ones they love.
Death has a curious way of reshuffling one's priorities. I slip aboard the Dutchman, find the heart, stab the beating thing, your father goes free from his debt. You're free to be with your charming murderers.
And you're willing to cut out your heart and bind yourself to the Dutchman? Forever?
No, mate. I'm free forever. Free to sail the seas beyond the edges of the map, free from death itself.
You have to do the job though, Jack. You have to ferry souls to the next world. Or end up just like Jones.
That he gives Will his compass and blows him overboard because he knows that this will help them in their long-term goals, letting him perform all the sacrifices that they need, giving the compass to Will to give to Beckett alongside Davy Jones, knowing his world will just keep getting worse by the day. So when we look back at the scene when the Brethren Court convenes, we are constantly reminded to question Jack's motives between others like Barbossa, who straight up intends to release Calypso from her mortal body. And then comparing that to the likes of Captain Elizabeth Swan, who we just made after Sao Feng's death, who wants to just fight the ETC straight on. This of course also comes from the fact that she wants revenge against Beckett, who did kill her own father, and of course one that Jack strangely agrees with in the most noblest of pirate traditions, being fighting only to scurry off into the sunset he knows how best.
I submit that here now, that is what we all must do. We must fight to run away. Aye!
Again, like I just said earlier, you question his motives rather to uphold the deal he just made with Beckett, knowing damn well with the compass he's led them down towards Shipwreck Cove to get the pirates out of hiding, which could be some sort of elaborate plan to stab from within to claim Davy Jones' role for himself as discussed earlier and stop Beckett that way. Frankly, of course, it probably is because he still is the hero, with the latter option after voting Miss Swan in as the Pirate King, deciding to keep to the code at behest of his father Captain Teague, and how the entire armada shows up soon afterward, where all Jack can say is just a call for parley, and realize that everyone just got mad at him because that's what happened, discovering again that this stuff was still his fault even though Turner was delivered to their side, a truth that his debt had to be settled once again by Davy Jones as he stands to breathe once more with a deal to trade Turner at their behest to commence with the plan, even if he still makes it not seem so while Barbossa grabs his pieces of 8 as that backup. We see here his own hallucinations appear once again to congratulate him on his next move and show him a path of what might happen next to become part of the crew, part of the ship, realizing if this is what he wants, tying back into that life or death message that he, Will, and Davy Jones have been tussling with their entire lives as Calypso got released and caused a maelstrom to prepare for the final battle. Of course, later, you see him manage to escape thanks to the trip Will taught him long ago in the first film, and how Murtaugh and Mulroy are able to be debatable idiots, allowing Sparrow to escape with the chest to seal Davy Jones' fate once and for all to his advantage to try and stop Beckett. Of course, until he was stopped by Jones again for a second, who knew what he was doing at that moment by not being able to fly away from that situation, which technically still helped him in that way to get an idea to fly up the mast and battle Jones for the final time. It is in the midst of chaos that it becomes a war for the chest between Jones, Turner, and Jack to try and prevent his judgment from ruling the seas once again. Help from friends who would do anything to keep the pirate's life alive. And in the shallows of it all, Jack finally manages to get what he wants, getting the key and the heart out of the chest once again like he did near the end of the last, preventing Jones from taking a step further, calling him a cruel man before stabbing Will.
Eddie Tonic, holding life and death in the palm of one's hand.
You're a cruel man, Jack Sparrow.
Cruel is a matter of perspective. Is it?
that he puts himself into a position of fear and confusion whether his immortal life taking his place is more important than the life of his own friend. It relates back to the question at hand of love being a dreadful bond that Jones experienced himself, and now laughs at the predicament of Mr. and Mrs. Turner, who just got married on the Pearl seconds ago. His face says it all, where he cannot let Will die, knowing the relationship and bond they all have, while being forced to give up the immortality he's been craving. That above all else, again, just like going back to his crew at Dead Man's Chest, he decides to just do the right thing, giving Will the chance to stab the heart while being distracted by his own father when he finally recognizes him before he had a remote chance to succumb to the true madness of the Dutchman, turning into a coral beast. And I'm reminded of a character far removed in a different cinematic universe, where it's all about the hardest choices requiring the strongest wills, which makes sense in terms of Will himself and Jack's own will, determined to save Turner at the cost of giving up his mortal life to free all of them, that he knows the pain of what might happen, despite when they were debating seconds back earlier in the film, but how this is the best path for them all. Giving no chance by Davy Jones, who relished in cruelty of a life he was punished for because of that same lost love, but learning to do better than that. He then decides to drag Elizabeth out to save both of them from drowning so that they all may have a chance to finally be determined for the cause of piracy, risking it all for Beckett for last time, knowing that they might have new advantage that he himself gave up, while leading his mortal enemy to wonder if he expects them to honor the agreement they so callously made, when he decides to just do it in the service of good business. And how he's proven right by the return that Will is alive and all the cursed crew are freed of their fish-like flesh, being human once again to fight off Beckett, who can only stand to watch his world crumbling down despite their own firepower. A victory well deserved while finally departing from his dear friends like the pirate Captain Turner, and unfortunately being mutinied upon by Barbossa yet again in the light reboot that they all search for in the Fountain of Youth. That while one story ended in the quest of Elizabeth and Will's, the rest continued on as he quested for the search of immortality in this own world. The quest of the immortal Captain Jack Sparrow. This is where our final movie comes into play for this video with On Stranger Tides, the last instance of Jack being a clever trickster who serves others for the good of it all. In those years, he became well known for the supposedly finding of the Fountain of Youth, saving his mate Joshua Gibbs from the gallows, questioning a figure called Captain Jack Sparrow searching for a crew of the fountain. The questions that lead to the king himself to recruit him for that journey of that quest of immortality for himself, where Barbossa appears yet again to have taken the status of privateer and lost his own leg for the pearl, which sended him into a rage. Of course, this is where we have to bring up the importance of what this all brings. Why mention all of this if Stranger Tides is still a weaker film overall? Well, it is done for the sole reason of having those two characters bring in those lives of adventure and heroism, and that they never lose sight or fate of what they were, especially Jack Sparrow in this case compared to the next film that destroyed all. Another quality added to this character is the use of perceived annoyance or madness of any type to break free of any societal chains put upon him as a pirate, messing up the king's dining room, slowly planning his perfect move when he decides to escape successfully. Like seeing the guard get tricked slipping on the tissue is an absolute testament to Sparrow's genius to find the truth of the search of the fountain and the mysterious person parading as himself. Like he cleverly plans everything so slowly and meticulously, all the more while the people just think he's a comedical idiot. So, after being saved from his own father, he found out about the key to the Fountain of Youth, testing a soul being worthy or not, and the mystery of the crew in search for such a thing, leading to find the fake Jack Sparrow, who was none other than his former love of Angelica. From there they had a brief battle, which then they took Jack to Blackbeard's ship, known as the Queen Anne's Revenge, after a hit by a dart not fully revealing what was required for the ritual in order to force him to help. And Angelica as a character is also similar to that of Jack, one where you couldn't see why it wasn't hard for him to actually fall in love with her, who tells many lies which are true, while also having many truths which are lies. Just like how Jack is the honestly dishonest pirate himself, learning that she is the long-lost daughter of Blackbeard, who honestly on his end think it's all a con being used as they do as pirates long ago, selling him on to become the first mate of his own ship, discovering his own search for the fountain coming after a quartermaster prophecy of a one-legged man who seeks to take his life, a life that is filled with more misdeeds and treachery that all pirates fear and hate, where he tried that very night to gather everyone to that very truth of Blackbeard's destination to perform a mutiny since the legendary pirate did not appear outside yet. Of course, then he does appear later to end that mutiny with ease, and then tries to torture Jack for his treachery and use a voodoo doll on him to force a journey towards that very fountain. This is where he finds the Black Pearl being kept in a bottle after what was lost, learning that Angelica's lies were lies of the truth, as we said earlier, which he appreciates, but also knows how dangerous Blackbeard is, wanting to protect her from any fate or harm despite his own mistakes, ones that even he admits himself when he was forcing Jack to help them. That's the only good thing he could have ever done in this entire life. And nevertheless, he still manages to save the day time and time again for the entire crew, where most of them got into trouble of mermaids, who they needed for the ritual to use the lighthouse to distract them away while they had to blindfold Jack soon after to keep him from escaping in that very regard. Where Jack was tasked by Blackbeard to find Ponce de Leon's ship that carried the important chalices out of threat that he kills his own daughter, as we said long ago, which he did not believe until he used one gun himself.
They're not even loaded.
Where when we notice something like this, it reminds us of the importance of his confused character, whether every scene like this in the past was intentional or not, being up to the viewer. Like he got to choose which pistol it was and grabbed one, but it also displayed shock even if a chance was given. A situation where he does not want to have her killed, and the truth that he knew earlier that Blackbeard would put her in danger for his own personal means. And again, how you know, it is that purposeful character of Jack to trick everybody in order to save the ones he loves the most. It's a great message for the journey of Jack because it's following the quest of his own life and the rich adventures that should follow, which after his own doll traveled down the cliff, he decided to do the same after his delayed actions to prevent Blackbeard from even winning, even trying to attempt to kill Angelica, which was the real goal of his own journey. This leads her to his own reunion with Barbossa, which they found out that the Spanish got to the chalices first on their way to destroy that very fountain when they unfortunately got captured. This is where we dive into the true motivations of the characters from where they were connected with. Jack knowing someone like Hector would never be interested in serving the Royal Highness himself, thinking in course in terms of the prophecy of the one-legged man and the pirate himself who relishes in thievery and all things abound in his life as we become accustomed to in their own journeys as villains who became heroes over time, or anti-heroes if you want to think that way in terms of Barbossa. That Barbossa couldn't let a devil like Blackbeard himself take his own life being the master of his own fate, where the ship was taken into a small form of a bottle. And knowing that he cannot let Blackbeard take the Fountain of Youth, he hatches his typical Sparrow plan of escape, reuniting with Gibbs and taking the chalices in a plan for attack, following closely behind. So coming back to Blackbeard and the crew, he makes a condition for him, meaning no harm done to Angelica, freeing Gibbs from involvement and returning his compass. All the while Barbossa laid in wait, hiding for the moment to follow. But while he found the cave, also comes the crew's knowledge that he never had been to the fountain despite leading everyone towards that point thinking he did.
Have you ever, in fact, seen with your own eyes the Fountain of Youth?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Like sort of he did, but never towards the point of the place itself, which angers everyone and almost got him killed until that distracted him to read what was in the chalice. Discovering finally the hidden cave of the fountain in all of its beauty, flowing constantly like it was waiting for its next victim for its eternal reward. Just like the truth of Jack bringing Barbossa to face Blackbeard for the revenge he's been searching for, that Angelica caught on very easy while he avoids such an answer and attempts to have everyone think about the sense of dueling each other for a feud between two other men.
You brought him here.
Would I do that?
But how most just don't listen to him because, you know, he lies more often than not and fights anyway, dwindling the numbers while the Spanish comes in to do the one and only thing, which was just to destroy the fountain and then leave. The perfect moment for Barbossa to strike with his poison blade into his heart for victory, while Angelica foolishly tries to help, disregarding Jack's calls that it is poison. It's a situation that now leads fate into the hands of Jack Sparrow himself to accomplish who gets rewarded, because the mermaid, whose plot is insanely absurdly stupid with the priests for whatever reason they decide to do with that, is back to give the chalices to Jack to get that fate and put the tear into one cup. That now we are cursed with the knowledge that both are dying and only one can be saved while the other one has to perish. This is where Jack demands that Blackbeard must save his daughter from death as atonement for his own sins, directing to where the cup has the tear. Yet of course, if you notice earlier, what he said was not true if you look closely, swapping the real cup seconds after he poured the one on the right rather than the left.
This one has the tear. You must drink the other.
No.
This is the key to Jack's character above all, knowing he wants to do the right thing to save Angelica rather than the heinous villain of Blackbeard for who he truly was in the world. When he did take the chalice Jack said had the tear.
Captain Teach, she's dying. You must save your daughter.
This one takes life. This one has the tear and gives life.
Aye, hurry.
That without a single hesitation, he just left his daughter to die like that for his own skin, like we saw earlier, threatening to use a pistol to kill her. He values his own life selfishly above all others, even if he wanted to atone for his mistakes with his own flesh and blood. It is a clear instance of his trickster nature when he looks back to them thinking he made a mistake when this was actually fully intentional just seconds into doing it.
Wait a minute. In fact, it might have been the other way around. This cup had the tear, that one had the other bit.
A logic that he makes that this is the only way, so it makes it look like Blackbeard could be redeemed in some instance by taking a drink that takes life rather than gives it. Something she cannot look past because apparently she loves her father too much, looking for a way to save him now, but how that cannot be when his flesh gets ripped, punished for such deeds of the past finally caught up, while Angelica gets the blessing with the healing or curse of eternal youth.
Your father saved you. Perhaps his soul is now redeemed.
And how at the end of all things, Jack is more the wiser against what she is wishing, trapping her on an island because he couldn't be sure to trust her motives as proven by his own journey. That no matter what, he proves his unwaverable faith as a true pirate against a former lover who seeks to get out for her own gain. Where this is how our journey finally ends with the last scene of Gibbs successfully getting the fleet of bottles of ships out of the Revenge to try and free the Pearl. An adventure once again with the compass out of the unknown, uncharted waters for Jack and Gibbs to go on. This is where the final quote I'll put at the end of the video comes into play as the best of the entire franchise, realizing what his quest of eternal life had truly been like. That no matter what, a pirate's life is truly what matters for me in the end, in the quest of finding what brings that victory after every chance he could have had to experience it. The name of Captain Jack Sparrow alone, the discoverer of the Fountain of Youth, and the infamous pirate of the Caribbean is something that will live long forever in every textbook and every name as it has now been known in the name of Disney. It is a testament where true heroes can come from in the lowest and scummiest of circumstances, but end up truly having hearts of gold for every person they meet if their intentions are really good. That people aren't cargo mate. They deserve to be free to explore to their heart's content, which his character well represents in The Fate of the Sea, running to a fate of untamed optimism for a beloved horizon. So when you look back on all Disney characters, just remember that the best ones come from the most flawed and unconventional ones that even existed. From a pirate's life that is filled with unbridled dirtiness, yet one we all praise as he remains immortally beloved as a character. One that, of course, like I said, the final film disrespected, but still overall great, nevertheless, in the endless course of time. And I'm all done. Off to seek adventure in salty old pirates. Savvy, goodbye.
Jack, I have to ask. You had the chalices, the water, the tear. You could have lived, maybe forever.
The fountain does test you, Gibbs, but better to not know which moment may be your last. Every morsel of your entire being alive to the infinite mystery of it all. And who's to say I won't live forever, eh? Discoverer of the Fountain of Youth. I have no say in it, Gibbs. It's a pirate's life for me. Savvy?